So, a few months ago, I had my first interview with Google, and unfortunately, it didn't go that well. Prior to the interview, I'd been brushing up on my data structures and algorithms and solving leak code problems for a few weeks. I even passed a coding assessment for Amazon, so when I got the email to schedule my Google interview, I felt pretty confident and asked for it to be a week after I got the initial invite. To prepare, I watched as many YouTube videos as I could on Google interviewing and practice answering questions on a Google Doc. If you don't already know, this is how Google's first round interviews go. They give you a Google Doc to write out your solution to the problem in whatever programming language you choose. So the day of the interview came, and of course I felt nervous, but just had to go for it and try my best. The first part of the interview was like 10 minutes of discussing my work history and background. The interviewer was really nice and even mentioned he was able to check out my YouTube channel and watch my video on building a metaverse and thought that it was a pretty cool project. I will say my YouTube channel was one of the things I added in my resume because I thought it'd be a good way to showcase some of my work and skills. Once the first part of the interview was over, we jumped over to the Google Doc and was asked to read a problem that was already on there. When I finished reading, there wasn't really anything that I needed to solve for yet, so already I was a bit confused and thrown off, since in most of the Google interviews that I watched, they explain the problem that you'd be solving for. Instead, the interviewer asked me to build a framework for the scenario that I was given, and I'm guessing my brain went blank because I really couldn't understand what he meant by this. We talked back and forth for a bit, and finally the interviewer showed me an example of what he wanted me to do, and I felt kind of dumb because basically all he wanted was for me to make a class or object for the specific case I was given. So already you can tell things weren't going well. After I did this, I was finally explained what I would be solving for, and stuff started to make more sense. I spoke through my thought process and about my initial brute force solution that could solve the problem. He agreed and said that this would work, but wanted me to come up with a more efficient solution with a better time complexity. So I continued to talk about some potential solutions, asked some more questions, and eventually came up with a better and faster way to solve for the problem. He agreed and asked me to start coding up a solution. Once I did this, I walked through the code step by step and explained how it would work. At this point, I was starting to feel better about how the interview was going, but then the question was changed slightly and I was asked to solve for something a bit different. And here's where I got stuck. I couldn't come up with a good way to solve for this and eventually had to get a hint. With the hint, I was able to implement the solution, code it out, and again walk through it step by step. But at this point, the interview was pretty much over. I got to ask a few questions at the end and just wrap up the interview. I will say overall it was a good experience for me, and though I didn't make it to the next round, I got to learn a lot about what it's like to interview at Google. The actual question that I solved for was probably like a medium difficulty question on leak code, so it was nothing too extreme or difficult. My biggest takeaway from the experience is to take as much time to prepare for the interview. I kind of jumped into the interview right away, and if I could go back and do it again, I would probably prepare for at least a month or two. Also, I would say to be prepared to expect the unexpected. Like I mentioned, after watching all these videos on Google interviews, I was kind of expecting it to go a certain way, but I'm sure every interview will probably be a bit different. And then finally, I would really try to brush up on the built-in functions and data structures of the programming language you choose when you interview, and make sure that you know the time complexity of these because it'll come in handy. But it was a great first experience. I felt the interviewer was really nice and tried to help me as much as possible, but in the end, it was really just on me. I needed to be better prepared. But thank you very much for watching. I wanted to make this video to try to help others preparing for their interviews. Best of luck, and until next time.